that I can bring charges on.
And so, how are you going to do that if you're not going to go to the police?
Well, as far as local police, I won't go to.
What about just getting out of town?
They're out of town, too.
They're out of town, too. So it's a whole gang of them?
They're all over.
They're all over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like to... I suppose you don't sleep well.
No, not really.
Yeah.
No, very hard.
Do you go to work?
No, I was working with these guys.
You're working with these guys. So how are you surviving?
Basically, not at all.
Not at all. So you just stay in your house?
Yes.
Will you be more afraid going home now after the show, or less?
Less.
Yeah. So what's going on now? Do they drive by your house all the time? And if they were going to kill you, why wouldn't they just go ahead and kill you? Why do they have to tap your phone and drive around and circle you and all that stuff? Why don't they just kill you?
Well, they would have to find me first. As far as coming in my house, I don't think they're going to do that.
You don't think they're going to come in your house?
No.
Why not if they want to kill you?
Well, they have a life, too.
Yeah. So are you pretty well protected and armed, and you got a pit bull in there?
No.
I'd get me a couple if I were you. Now, I don't mean to make light of it, but so you are just living your life in a sense of terror now, is what you're doing.
It's not so much as terror. It's just waiting.
Waiting.
Just waiting. Trying to find help in the meantime.
Trying to find help other than the police.
Right.
And the reason you don't want to call the police is because you think they're connected with the police.
Local police, yes.
With the local police. All right. I thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
Enter a university.
All right, so people, the phone lines are lit up because they're not clear on what happened. You were working for some people who wanted you to bump off, kill the president of the company.
Yes.
Right. And because you refused to kill the president of the company, these people who asked you to kill the president of this company now want to kill you.
Yes.
And they're threatening your life, your child's life?
My family.
Your family, the whole family.
Basically, my 2 sons and my daughter.
Your 2 sons and your daughter. So you fear for them, too?
Yes.
Yeah. And you are afraid to go to the police because if you go to the police, these people have told you. Suppose they're just bluffing, though, and they really aren't connected with the police. You think they are?
Yes. I think they are.
Yeah.
A little money will help out.
Little money. And they have money?
Yes.
They have money.
Yes.
Okay. So this has all been very interesting, but anybody who's watching wants to contact me later about what I don't know anything about anybody at any time other than what you told me here. So don't come calling on me asking me, do I know, because I don't. And you don't know what you're going to do?
No, not really.
Mm-hmm. So are your children in school?
2 of them are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do they? And they know about this? They know?
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm. So you are just, I asked this of Jimmy Fracciano at the beginning of the show. Did he think that he was a walking dead man?
I don't, no.
You don't?
No.
How'd you get yourself in this mess?
It was quite easy.
Yeah.
You know,
hanging out with the wrong crowd?
Hanging out with the wrong crowd.
Same thing your mama told you when you were 15 years old not to do. Yeah.
Listening to guys who talk fast.
Yeah.
You know, want to make a fast buck.
Is there no way you can, like, apologize to them or... That's where I'd be ready to apologize about now. There's no way you can make a plea for your life and just say, look, I didn't want to kill him and it's okay, and I'm...
Well, the guy who's threatening my life, his life is in jeopardy also.
Why is his life in jeopardy?
because as soon as this guy, the president of the firm I work for, finds out that his vice president is out to get him.
Oh, Lord, and you would say that. Okay, good. It's been an interesting show, but I repeat, I know nothing about nobody at no time. Thank you very much for watching. For written transcripts, send $3 to Oprah Transcripts, 2 John Street, New York, New York, 10038.
Have Gun Will Travel. It's more than the name of an old television series. Police say most murders in this country involve killers and victims who were acquainted. But now this chilling development. Suspicion that across the land, they've been murders by killers who not only hire themselves out, but advertise. CBS News correspondent Peter Van Sant investigated.
A bomb explodes in a car, nearly killing an Atlanta businessman. Luckily, one of the planted hand grenades didn't go off. Another Atlanta businessman is machine gunned to death in his car.
It was an execution type murder.
In West Palm Beach, Florida, the assistant city manager is beaten to death in her home. Investigators believe these incidents are among dozens of murders and attempted murders across the country that have been committed by an extensive murder-for-hire ring that openly advertised its services in Soldier of Fortune magazine.
We have bombings, we have attempted murders, we have murders, basically whatever the client was willing to pay for.
Law enforcement officials in 15 states are investigating cases they believe are connected by hitmen who until April of this year placed ads in Soldier of Fortune, a publication that specializes in stories about mercenaries and weaponry. One of the ads read, "Gun for hire, 37-year-old professional mercenary desires jobs. Vietnam veteran, discreet and very private. All jobs considered." Richard Savage placed that ad. He has been charged with 2 murders and is a suspect in 2 attempted murders.
It was really weird. A whole lot of people wanted people killed. A lot of people wanted the girlfriend's fingers cut off. I mean, it's really bizarre.
Investigators say this man, Michael Wayne Jackson, placed a similar ad in Soldier of Fortune. Officials say Jackson was hired to kill Doug Norwood by his fiance's old boyfriend. They believe at least 5 attempts were made on Norwood's life.
They shot me in Fayetteville, Arkansas. They bombed me in Fayetteville. They tried to shoot me with a high-powered rifle. They tried to machine gun me. And that's just the cases that we know of.
Norwood was shot through the chest and leg. He now wears a bulletproof vest and always carries a .357 Magnum pistol.
When anyone goes to bed tonight, if someone wants them done away with, it's possible through this group that tomorrow someone may make an attempt on their life.
It's as simple as picking up a telephone and ordering a pizza.
How much money were these people willing to pay to have someone killed?
Most of it was, $3,000 or $4,000.
Many subscribers to Soldier of Fortune magazine are military hobbyists. They meet once a year to learn about the latest weapons.
One cut does that. It's the only knife in the world that does that.
In a magazine that glorifies weapons and military adventure, investigators believe hitmen found the perfect medium.
Soldier of Fortune magazine was used as a conduit between these individuals to communicate.
In April, the magazine stopped printing gun-for-hire ads. Soldier of Fortune officials have pledged to aid any murder investigation.
And if anyone is guilty of anything, then we think they ought to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Officials say 17 arrests have been made in the murder-for-hire investigation, including 9 people who allegedly were recruited to attempt prison breakouts in Indiana and Pennsylvania. Sources say the FBI is combing through back issues of Soldier of Fortune to see if they can connect other major crimes to the magazine's classified ads. Investigators say that each week a new state is added to the list where murder-for-hire hitmen have struck. Sources say a federal grand jury will be called soon to investigate what one official calls the largest dial-a-murder syndicate in American history. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Atlanta.
CBS News correspondent Peter Van Sant's shocking report last July about hired killers who advertised their services in a magazine. The magazine stopped taking those ads, but correspondent Van Sant has been digging up more on the killers, on their customers, on their victims, and why the killings may not have stopped.
A Florida man is shot to death in his living room, murdered by a hired killer. Car bombings in Omaha and Atlanta. Arrests in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Washington State. Across the country, investigators continue to uncover murders and contract killers who openly advertised in Soldier of Fortune magazine and were willing to kill anyone, anywhere for a price.
These are our terrorists. I think these are the United States terrorists of the 80s.
Soldier of Fortune magazine caters to mercenaries and gun lovers. In its back pages, investigators say the magazine unknowingly catered to killers.
Guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
Robert Spearman answered one of those ads. At his trial in West Palm Beach, Florida, one of the men he hired testified how Spearman wanted his wife killed.
Smother her to death, or not to make it messy. He didn't want her all tore up or anything.
Another hitman, John Wayne Hearn, placed an ad in Soldier of Fortune magazine. It read, ex-Marines, non-vets, weapons specialists, high-risk assignments in U.S. or overseas. Hearn received a number of offers. Investigators believe he murdered at least 3 people.
He's a cold-blooded killer. He was on his way to becoming a serial murderer.
Hearn recently testified against the Florida woman who hired him to kill her husband. During the trial, a telephone tape was played in which Hearn asked for help in tracking down his victim.
You said you didn't want to know, but hell, you know what's going to happen. You might as well know anyway. Because I need to know approximately which way he goes and all this.
Officials recently reviewed the classified ads of 6 Soldier of Fortune magazines. What they found was startling.
We found in excess of 70 individuals that had offered services of a questionable nature.
Lawmen say murder-for-hire investigations linked to Soldier of Fortune magazine are now underway in 18 states, involving dozens of victims. Doug Norwood is suing Soldier of Fortune magazine. Police say at least 5 attempts have been made on Norwood's life by hitmen who advertised in the magazine.
Anybody in America can be the victim of one of these crimes simply because somebody wants you dead. They look through that want ads in Soldier of Fortune, and they just go and they rent a murderer.
Richard Savage advertised for months in Soldier of Fortune. He's been indicted for murders in 3 states.
It got to be, most of it was, would you kill my so-and-so?
Were there a lot of calls?
A whole lot, just based on my phone conversations. It was tremendous.
25 people have been arrested so far in the investigation. Soldier of Fortune magazine has discontinued running its gun-for-hire ads, but investigators say people still call using phone numbers found in past issues. Despite the crackdown, lawmen believe that murderers are still taking orders and hunting down victims. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Atlanta.
Next, we'll hear about prominent American scientists refusing to take part in Star Wars research. And Peter Van Sant continues his investigation of murder for hire, hitmen who will stop at nothing. Murder for hire, professional killers who sell their services through the pages of a well-known magazine. CBS News correspondent Peter Van Sant first broke the story on this broadcast of murder for hire investigations. In a follow-up report, he tells us tonight the situation is only getting worse.
Exit immediately, drop everything, run.
154 people evacuate an American 727 in Dallas last October after a bomb partially detonates in the jet's baggage compartment.
There was one lady who threw herself over the seats, kind of swimming.
Moments later, as this tape obtained by CBS News shows, the bomb surprisingly detonates again. Officials believe it could have blown the jet out of the sky. Lawmen say the attempted bombing is another in a series of terrorist incidents, including murders and car bombings across the country, carried out or assisted by hitmen who openly advertised in Soldier of Fortune magazine.
They plant explosives on airlines. They attach hand grenades to vehicles. They shoot people. All those are normal tools of the trade for terrorists.
This man, Albert Thielman, has pleaded guilty to charges of planting the bomb on the jet in an attempt to kill his family and collect more than $2 million in insurance. Investigators say Thielman answered this gun-for-hire ad in Soldier of Fortune magazine, which had been placed by Richard Savage, who authorities believe masterminded numerous contract killings. Investigators say Savage passed the bomb request on to William Buckley, who sold the explosives to Thielman. Buckley has been indicted for the jet bombing and is expected to be indicted soon for another attempted murder.
William Buckley is the man that shot me last August.
Authorities say Doug Norwood has survived at least 6 attempts on his life, hits allegedly ordered by his wife's ex-husband. Norwood says Buckley shot him through the chest and leg.
William Buckley will do anything for $1. He has absolutely no regard for anyone else's health, well-being, and he is a cold-blooded professional contract killer.
Buckley has admitted trying to kill Norwood. In this tape shot by Norwood's attorneys, Buckley described how he planned to carry out the murder.
If he's home, go in, stun him, put a pillow over his head so that you won't have to watch the blood, and if you can, shoot him.
Buckley has already been convicted in another murder-for-hire contract, a grenade attack on a Georgia man.
I mean, if there was a job there to do, he was willing to do it.
Investigators say each week they are learning of new murders and attempted murders tied to hitmen who advertised in Soldier of Fortune magazine, hired terrorists willing to kill for money. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Dallas.
It was learned today that there may be yet another hitman involved in the alleged conspiracy to kill a U of A law student. 39-year-old Tulsa businessman Larry Gray was due to stand trial later this month for allegedly hiring at least 3 different people to kill law student Doug Norwood. But today, prosecutor Kim Smith asked that the trial be postponed to give him more time to investigate new evidence in the case. Smith says he needs time to interview Stephen Boyd, another alleged hitman now in custody in a Florida jail. Smith asked for an 8-week delay. Judge Malin Gibson is expected to rule on that request tomorrow.
In an alleged murder-for-hire plot returned to federal court in Fayetteville today, Michael Wayne Jackson of Texas pled guilty to 1 count of placing explosives under an automobile. As you might recall, Jackson is accused in the murder-for-hire plot involving a University of Arkansas law student. A federal judge, H. Franklin Waters, dismissed 3 other charges of a 4-count indictment recently returned by a grand jury in Atlanta. Jackson faces a possible 10-year prison sentence and a $10,000 fine, but Judge Waters postponed sentencing pending indictments in Texas and Kentucky.
And now, from the mountains of Fayetteville to the river valley of Fort Smith, this is the News Center at 6 with Craig Cannon, Jerry Overton in Fayetteville, Ken Rank with the weather, and Steve Heyman with sports. The News Center at 6, the award-winning newscast.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Here's what's happening at 6 o'clock. A plot to kill a U of A law student is now receiving the attention of the national media. 2 of the 3 top networks are following this story. 1 network news crew arrived in Fayetteville this week to begin shooting. News Center's Randy Mulligan has details.
Tom Jarrell and the rest of ABC's 2020 crew began piecing together for themselves the alleged murder-for-hire ring that has been the subject of many local reports over the past 8 months. The News Center caught up with ABC correspondent Tom Jarrell, who said so far it's been an eye-opening experience.
It's shocking to me, anyway, to learn the cheap price of life in this country today. Killings used to be $100,000, $200,000, $1 million jobs. Now these people are running around killing people for $1,000, $2,000, and sometimes they get confused and just get a few $100s out of it.
Jarrell will be in Northwest Arkansas through tomorrow working on the story. Here's part of his interview this morning with Doug Norwood, the Arkansas connection in what has been termed the largest dial-a-murder syndicate in American history. It was Norwood who was the victim of at least 5 attempts on his life. One of them here at his apartment last August 30th in Fayetteville.
What happened? You have all these construction workers standing here watching and listening and seeing this whole thing. Did any come to help you?
Oh, no one helped me at all. They were so upset about this thing happening and they were so shocked that, you know, they didn't want to get involved because these people had guns. They knew they were shooting, and all these guys had were claw hammers.
Who knows if this might not be just the tip of the iceberg, and crimes like this, usually for those they catch, there are 15 to 20 that they don't even know about. So who knows how many people have been killed, how many people possibly would have been killed had this operation not been stopped.
The story will be shown on ABC's 2020 program within the next 6 to 8 weeks. For the News Center.
Actor Richard Boone portrayed a 19th century soldier of fortune, a man who would, for a price, do other people's dirty work. His name, Paladin. His business card read simply, "Have gun, will travel." There are still soldiers of fortune, still paladins in this world who advertise their services. In the past 2 years, several times in fact, business has brought them to Fayetteville.
I just couldn't believe it was happening to me. I mean, I'm from a little small town in Florida, never been in any kind of trouble, never even had a fist fight or anything. And then all of a sudden I've got this gang of people trying to hunt me down and kill me.
The latest of several attempts to murder Doug Norwood was thwarted by the arrest of 40-year-old Michael Wayne Jackson. Authorities found in his car a small arsenal. Jackson confessed that he'd been hired by Tulsa investment banker Larry Gray. Gray, who denies the allegation, was arrested 2 days later after Jackson called him, requested more money, and got it.
Larry Gray tried to have me murdered because I was going to marry his ex-wife, and he was extremely upset about that, and he was determined to kill me before I could marry her.
University police investigators John Herring and Jim Swearingen were the first to interrogate Jackson. He told them that the Norwood case was but one of numerous murder contracts, that an organized ring of hitmen were selling their services from coast to coast.
Just about any type of crime that you could imagine, anywhere from beating people up to bombing their vehicles, arsons of buildings, murder, any act of terrorism.
Tomorrow night, we'll take a look at how the Norwood case fits into the federal investigation and at how large that investigation has become. In Fayetteville, Mike Thomas for the News People.
They had tried to murder me a couple of days before in Memphis, Tennessee, and that they had tried to murder me in Tallahassee, Florida. But I was unaware at the time that when I was in those cities that anything was going wrong.
As authorities continued to investigate the Norwood case, it quickly became apparent that they were dealing with much more than just a local attempted murder.
It's the largest investigation that I'm personally aware of or have been involved with, and having spent over 10 years in law enforcement, it's one of the largest I've ever encountered by any means.
It was the classified section of Soldier of Fortune magazine which provided the catalyst that took the case from the local level to an item of national significance. In reviewing only 6 monthly issues, investigators found 70 different ads of a questionable nature. The magazine has been published for 10 years. Doug Norwood feels the magazine has gone too far in accepting ads from men willing to consider any job. He has filed a $4 million suit against Soldier of Fortune and 5 people suspected of trying to kill him.
Soldier of Fortune no longer takes these personal ads. And regardless of whether I win the lawsuit or not, I think that I've prevented other people from being murdered in the future.
Norwood's suit is set for trial in January. Meanwhile, the criminal investigation has spread to 21 states, and so far 25 people have been indicted. Authorities say 38-year-old Richard Savage is the kingpin of at least one ring of hitmen. Savage is charged with 2 murders, 2 attempted murders, and with masterminding the plan to kill Norwood. 42-year-old Michael Wayne Jackson is charged with conspiring with Savage to kill a man in Georgia and with conspiring to kill Norwood in January. 36-year-old William Buckley is charged with an attempt on a Georgia man's life and was recently indicted for selling the bomb that was placed on board an American Airlines jet carrying 154 people from Austin to Dallas, Texas. Buckley admits that he and a fugitive named Dean DeLuca also tried to kill Norwood.
DeLuca was supposed to immobilize him with a stun gun. And then because I had never shot anybody, neither had DeLuca, we were to go to the bedroom and get a pillow and put it over Norwood's head so we wouldn't have to watch the bullets hit and then shoot through the pillow.
Tomorrow night, we'll hear more from William Buckley, the man who's admitted shooting and wounding Norwood in his Fayetteville apartment last August. And we'll also hear of Buckley's relationship with Richard Savage and the ring of hitmen for hire. In Fayetteville, Mike Thomas for the News People.
Every one of the hitmen that I have heard about in any shape, form, or manner
interview with investigators, William Buckley revealed that for more than a year he worked for Richard Savage at the Continental Club in Knoxville, Tennessee. Buckley says Savage used the magazine ads to solicit business and that he used the club as a base of operation.
Savage would get as many as 15 or 16 calls a month off his ads. And, of course, like I say, a lot of them he wouldn't even talk to people because they were indiscreet. But every once in a while he'd find somebody and just milk them for every penny he could.
Well, the fees would range from several $100s to many thousands of dollars depending on the services required. If the service was to do away with a particular individual, of course the price was higher.
One of the calls Richard Savage received, according to Buckley, came from Tulsa businessman Larry Gray. Buckley says Gray feared that his wife was leaving him for Doug Norwood and that Gray wanted Norwood dead. Savage sent Buckley to Tulsa to collect $5,000. Buckley says Gray offered him only $1,700 and that he was getting tired of the soap opera scenario.
I really was getting sick of this whole business at this point that I really couldn't understand why any man would want to kill somebody because his wife would leave. Gray was not a bad-looking man. Gray apparently had a lot of money, so it just didn't seem that he did strike me with a whip. And he said, I don't care how you do it, just don't hurt my wife in the process.
Buckley stopped doing Savage's dirty work in November of last year and began cooperating with authorities in February of this year. Tomorrow night, we'll look further at the investigation and at how Doug Norwood plans to go on with his life now that most of his assailants are behind bars. In Fayetteville, Mike Thomas for the News People.
The longer these people were engaged in this activity, the better they were becoming at it. We find that initially some of the attempts appeared to be inept. As time grew and as they tried more of these, we found that they were becoming more successful and that people actually died as a result.
It was investigator John Herring and Lieutenant Jim Swearingen who first began putting the pieces of the puzzle together, pieces that began to reveal a picture of paid killers. The problem they now face is that the puzzle seems much larger than they ever imagined.
In most cases, as the investigation progresses, you begin to see a winding down of the case. In this particular incident, it seems that the case continues to increase in scope.
Currently, Richard Savage, the alleged ringleader, and 21-year-old Sean Dutray are on trial in Florida for the murder of Anita Spearman, the former assistant city manager of West Palm Beach. Savage's wife, Deborah Mattingly, and William Buckley are in Georgia jails, charged with conspiring to kill Dana Free in the suburbs of Atlanta. Michael Jackson is in federal custody, cooperating with authorities. He has testified before several grand juries and will likely testify before several more. Larry Gray, charged with hiring Savage and Jackson to kill Doug Norwood, is currently in the custody of the U.S. Marshal's Office. Dean DeLuca, also charged in the Norwood case, remains a fugitive.
He's a very dangerous man, and he's exhibited that danger to numerous people, and he's out on the loose. And I have to be constantly aware that he might show up. He might be around the next corner.
Despite the arrests, Doug Norwood lives his life cautiously.
I probably will look over my shoulder for many more years. Larry Gray, if he's convicted, will be put in the penitentiary. And what better breeding ground for hired killers would it be for him to, to discuss this and hire some guy getting out on parole?
After he graduates from law school next month, Norwood plans on living his life under the protective arm of the law.
I plan on trying to get a job as a deputy prosecuting attorney here in Arkansas. And I plan on trying the very best I can to lead a normal life. But I'm afraid that I'm going to have to either stay in law enforcement or in the prosecution aspect of law enforcement for the rest of my life.
Tomorrow night, we'll conclude the series with a look at whether or not the average citizen can avoid becoming prey for paid killers. In Fayetteville, Mike Thomas for the News People.
if you sit back and you think about what a terrorist is, they instill terror in people. It makes people afraid for their safety. And I think that if you look at this case and all the people involved, the cases involved, I think they do exactly that.
Investigators have called the ring of hitmen America's terrorists. The investigation of their activities has been underway for more than a year now and will likely continue for several years to come. Although Doug Norwood is thankful for that investigation, he does have reservations about the way it all began.
They just could not comprehend the scope of this case. They couldn't believe the facts as they were being unfolded. And as a result, there was a long delay in some of these crimes being committed and people being taken into custody.
Arrests have been made, and this particular ring of hitmen has been broken. Still, one must question whether the truly professional hitman would ever openly advertise for jobs, and one must wonder how many more hitmen are still at large. Investigators say